It's 11 in the morning on an ordinary Tuesday and you're sitting in the waiting room of a private bank. The floor is polished gray marble, so smooth you can almost see your reflection in it. Next to you sits a man wearing a gray t-shirt that's been washed one too many times, jeans worn thin at the knees, and sneakers that lost their original color years ago. Nobody pays him any attention. The receptionist glances at him sideways, as if he'd wandered into the wrong building. When his name is finally called, he stands up slowly, unhurried, and walks toward the wealth manager's office. That man has $14 million in assets managed by that bank. You know this because seconds later, you'll see his name pop up on the reception screen when she updates the appointment list. And in that instant, you understand something most people never truly grasp. Real money almost never looks like anything. What you actually see is something else entirely. Over the next few minutes, you're going to understand why the people who have the most money are usually the ones who show it the least, and why that behavior isn't an accident or cheapness or eccentricity. It's a strategy, one that protects money, grows it, and keeps it from becoming a target. You're going to find out why looking poor in certain moments and in certain ways can be one of the smartest financial decisions you'll ever make. And you're also going to understand why most people do the exact opposite and end up paying an enormous price for it. Now, picture a different scene. It's Saturday night and you're in the parking lot of an expensive restaurant. A sports car roars in, takes up 2 spaces because the driver doesn't want anyone scratching the paint, and 2 people step out dressed head to toe in designer labels. Everyone turns to look. Everyone comments. That couple just spent more on that car and those clothes than most people save in 5 years. What almost nobody asks is how much they owe, how much credit card debt they're carrying, how many months behind they are on the car payment, how much money they'll have left in the bank after that dinner. And here's the central problem we're going to take apart today. We live in a culture that confuses spending with having. It confuses looking successful with actually possessing something. And that confusion, harmless as it seems, is one of the main reasons so many people work their entire lives and end up with very little to show for it, while others, much quieter, build fortunes their own neighbors never suspect exist. You, watching this video right now, probably already sense where this is going, but stay with me. Because the interesting part isn't the general idea. The interesting part is exactly how this works, with real examples, real psychology, and concrete steps you can apply to your own life, no matter how much you earn today. Let's start by understanding where this culture of showing off actually came from, because it didn't appear out of nowhere. For most of human history, displaying wealth made sense. In societies where most people lived close to subsistence, a gold ring, a large house, or a fine horse were reliable signals of status and capability. People had no way to verify anyone's actual net worth, so outward symbols were the only information available. If you looked rich, you probably were, because producing those symbols cost real time, real labor, and real resources. The problem is the world changed completely, and that signal stopped being reliable a long time ago. Today, buying the appearance of wealth is easier than it's ever been. Credit exists. 7-year car loans exist. Credit cards that hand you a massive limit even on a modest salary exist. You can rent luxury handbags, watches, even sports cars for a single weekend. The gap between looking rich and being rich has never been wider, and yet most people still treat outward signals as if they still meant something. This creates a kind of social theater. Everyone performs for an audience that in reality doesn't have nearly as much money as it appears to have either, and is performing right back. It's a closed loop of people impressing each other with money most of them don't actually have, financed by debt nobody can see. A widely cited study by economist Thomas Stanley, author of The Millionaire Next Door, found something that surprised a lot of people when it first came out. Most millionaires in the United States didn't live in mansions or drive luxury cars. They lived in middle-class houses, in ordinary neighborhoods, and drove cars several years old, often bought secondhand. Meanwhile, many of the people who did live in the mansions and drive the new cars had surprisingly low net worth, sometimes even negative, once all their debt was subtracted. The takeaway isn't that spending money is bad. The takeaway is that the visual signal of wealth and actual wealth almost never line up, and confusing the two can cost you decades of your financial life. Now here's where this gets deeper than a simple save more tip. Because looking poor, or at least looking discreet, isn't only a matter of financial common sense, it's also a matter of active protection. And this is something people with real money tend to understand almost instinctively. Think of invisibility as a layer of security. When the way you dress, the car you drive, your house, and the way you talk don't reveal how much you have, you become a much less attractive target for several things at once. You become less attractive to theft and fraud because nobody identifies you as someone worth scamming. You become less attractive to aggressive salespeople because they don't read you as an easy sale. You become less attractive to relatives or acquaintances looking for a loan because they don't assume you're sitting on extra cash somewhere. And you become less attractive, oddly enough, to opposing lawyers in any legal dispute because visible wealth looks like wealth worth chasing. There's a phrase that circulates among wealth advisors that sums this up bluntly. Money you can see gets asked for, envied, or sued. Money you can't see just keeps growing. Let's put this into a concrete example because abstract ideas land better as real stories. Picture two people, both 35 years old, both earning exactly the same salary, say $90,000 a year. Let's call them person A and person B, though you can picture yourself in either seat. Person A decides they want the world to know things are going well for them. They buy a new car with $650 monthly payments. They move to an apartment in a pricier area, $400 a month more than they actually need. They refresh their wardrobe every season with designer pieces. They eat out at expensive restaurants several times a week, partly because they enjoy it and partly because they want their social media to show an attractive life. By the end of the month, between the car, the rent, the clothes, and the nights out, there's barely anything left. And whatever is left almost always disappears into some unexpected expense. And person B, on the same salary, does something different. They drive a 6-year-old car already paid off. They live in a modest apartment in a safe but unremarkable area, costing far less than they could actually afford. Their clothes are simple, comfortable, functional. They don't post their financial life online. Nobody who sees them on the street would guess they earn $90,000 a year. Every month, a significant chunk of their paycheck gets automatically routed into investments before that money ever gets a chance to become a purchase. 10 years later, the difference between these two lives isn't subtle. It isn't a difference of a few $1,000s. It's a difference of hundreds of thousands of dollars, thanks to the compounding effect on all the money person B chose not to spend on appearances. And here's the most interesting part of all of this. From the outside, during those 10 years, person A looked like the successful one. Person B looked, at best, average, someone without much apparent ambition, someone who, by typical social standards, wasn't living their best life. But the financial reality was exactly the opposite. This brings us to something you need to really hear, because it probably contradicts everything you've absorbed from years of social media, advertising, and social comparison. The public perception of success and actual financial success are almost never the same thing. And in a lot of cases, they're directly opposed, because every dollar you spend to look successful is a dollar that can no longer work to actually make you successful. Now think about something different for a moment. Think about how genuinely wealthy people you actually know or have heard about behave. Beyond the ones in luxury magazines or social media videos showing off private jets, studies on actual net worth show a consistent pattern. People with more money tend to carry less consumer debt, not more. They tend to drive older cars, not newer ones. They tend to spend a smaller share of their income on clothes and luxury accessories, not a bigger one. Most of the real wealth in the world isn't walking down the street flashing gold watches. It's walking quietly, in comfortable clothes, getting into cars nobody would look at twice. This doesn't mean every wealthy person is an obsessive minimalist who never treats themselves. It means that when they do spend, they do it consciously and deliberately, not as an automatic reflex to impress someone else. And it means, above all, that they figured out something important a long time ago. Real status doesn't need to be announced. It holds itself up in the form of assets, investments, property, and businesses that keep generating income, even while you sleep. Let's dig a little deeper into the psychology of this, because understanding the why will help you far more than just memorizing the what. Spending money to look successful triggers an almost instant social reward. When someone admires your new car, comments on your outfit, compliments your house, your brain releases a hit of immediate validation. It's a fast reward, visible, and very easy to get again and again. The problem is that reward is fleeting. It lasts minutes, sometimes hours, and then it needs to be fed again with another purchase, another symbol, another visible gesture. Investing money, on the other hand, doesn't offer that instant reward. Nobody stops you on the street to congratulate you for transferring $500 into your investment account this month. There's no photo to post. There's no instant hit of social admiration. The reward for investing arrives much later, often years later, in the form of financial freedom, options, and peace of mind. It's a much bigger reward, but a much slower one, and the human brain naturally prefers the immediate over the delayed. This, underneath everything, is the quiet financial battle playing out inside every person every single day. Instant gratification against long-term building. And the people who manage to accumulate real wealth are, almost without exception, the ones who learn to tolerate the discomfort of not getting that immediate reward because they understood they were building something far more valuable in the background. And this is where we come back to the central idea of this video, because now you have the context to understand it fully. Looking poor, or more accurately, looking neutral, discreet, free of visible wealth signals isn't a limitation. It's a strategic choice that protects your money from two threats at once. The first threat is yourself, your own impulse to spend for that instant validation. The second threat is the outside world, which behaves differently depending on what it thinks you have. Let's talk about that second threat because it deserves its own attention. When people sense you have money, their behavior toward you shifts, almost always in ways that don't benefit you. Salespeople treat you differently, and not for the better. They push the more expensive model, the extended warranty, the premium package, because they assume you can afford it and probably won't question the price too closely. Family and friends, without meaning any harm in most cases, start to see you as a potential source of financial help. A loan here, a contribution there, a quiet expectation that you can cover certain costs because clearly things are going well for you. In more serious situations, visible wealth can attract legal attention. Lawyers who work on contingency, meaning they only get paid if they win the case, tend to weigh not just who's right, but who can actually pay. Visible wealth, a flashy lifestyle, can make you a more attractive target for a lawsuit, even in minor disputes that would otherwise never have gone anywhere. And at the most basic level, visible wealth also exposes you to real physical risk. Theft, targeted fraud, robbery. All of these risks climb when your outward signals scream, there's money here, instead of staying quiet. That's why people who manage large fortunes, the financial advisors, the asset protection attorneys, almost always tell their wealthiest clients the same thing. Live discreetly. Don't drive the flashiest car on the block. Don't be the person everyone automatically identifies as the one with money. Let your wealth work quietly, protected behind the right legal structures, while your daily life stays calm and unremarkable. There's another example that illustrates this even better, one that plays out far from private banks and big fortunes in the much more ordinary world of small businesses. Picture the owner of a neighborhood laundromat, someone who's been washing and pressing clothes on the same corner for 20 years. He drives an old van, dented in a few places, that he uses for deliveries. He wears comfortable work clothes, almost always the same pants and shirt combination. Nobody in the neighborhood would peg him as a man of money, and yet that business, after 2 decades of steady cash flow, disciplined reinvestment, and zero unnecessary debt, is worth over $2 million today, and he owns 3 more storefronts he rents out to other local businesses. Compare that to another business owner on the same street, someone who opened his shop just 5 years ago. This man does drive a new car, financed close to the limit of what he can afford. He redid his storefront with an eye-catching design, spent aggressively on advertising from month 1, and projects without a doubt an image of instant success. The problem is his business barely brings in enough to cover the car payment, the rent on the shop, and the advertising he keeps paying for every month. One bad quarter, one dip in customers, one unexpected expense, and that entire facade is at risk of collapsing. The difference between these two business owners isn't intelligence or effort. Both of them work hard. The difference is what they chose to prioritize first, the appearance of success or the substance behind it. And that choice, repeated year after year, ends up determining who survives a crisis and who doesn't. If any of this is hitting home, you're probably wondering how to actually apply it beyond the theory. The truth is, you don't need any dramatic overnight change. It starts with small decisions, sustained over time, that gradually reshape your relationship with visible money. The first decision is simple but powerful. Before any big purchase, ask yourself whether you're making it for yourself or for someone else's eyes. A car that does its job and gives you mechanical peace of mind is a rational decision. A car chosen mainly because it impresses the neighbors is an emotional decision wearing the costume of a need. The second decision has to do with the order of your financial priorities. Most people spend first and save or invest whatever is left over, which is usually little or nothing. People who build real wealth invest first the moment their income arrives and build the rest of their life around whatever remains. That small change in order, applied month after month, is probably the single most important financial habit there is. The third decision is cultural, almost philosophical. Stop measuring your progress against what you see in other people's lives, especially on social media, where almost everything shown is an edited version, financed by debt, or literally rented for a few hours just for a photo. Measure your progress by comparing your own situation today to where you were a year ago. That's the only benchmark that actually tells you whether you're moving forward. Now, I want to pause here for a second because it's important to be clear about something. None of this means living in fear or denying yourself every pleasure in life or pretending to be someone you're not. This isn't about being ashamed of success. It's about understanding there's a huge difference between enjoying your money privately and displaying it publicly. And that difference has real, measurable consequences for your financial and personal safety. You can have a beautiful home on the inside, comfortable, well-equipped, that looks like any other house on the block from the outside. You can have substantial savings and investments without your social media announcing it. You can travel, enjoy experiences, treat yourself occasionally without turning every single moment into a public performance designed to impress strangers who, honestly, don't think about you nearly as much as you assume. Before we move into the final part of this video, I want to tell you briefly about something I put together specifically to help you put all of this into practice. It's called Financial Freedom in 90 Days, and it's a completely free ebook that goes deeper into building quiet but powerful financial habits, structuring your spending so your money works for you instead of working for your image, and starting to build real wealth no matter what you earn today. To get it, you just need 3 simple things: subscribe to the channel, like this video, and leave a comment telling me something related to today's topic. I'd genuinely love to know, for example, if you've ever felt that pressure to spend money just so people would think things are going well for you, or if you know someone close to you who, like person B in our example, lives simply while quietly building wealth nobody suspects. Tell me your experience in your own words, because your comment could be exactly what someone else needs to read today. Now let's come back to the main thread, because the most revealing part of this story is still ahead. Let's go back to the man from the private bank we opened with. He didn't always have $14 million. He started, like most people, with a modest salary, a steady job, and no special inheritance. What he did have from a young age was a clear decision about what kind of life he wanted to build, and that decision never included impressing anyone. For more than 20 years, that man drove used cars always bought with cash. He lived in modest homes even after his net worth had already crossed $1 million. He consistently reinvested a large share of his income, month after month, year after year, without interruption, without exceptions, for "this time I deserve it." When his friends bought new cars, he kept driving his. When his colleagues moved into bigger houses, he stayed put, comfortable, but never excessive. People who knew him only on the surface probably thought of him as average, maybe even someone who hadn't accomplished much by typical visual standards. But while that outside perception stayed flat, his net worth grew exponentially, quietly, invisible to almost everyone, until it became the fortune that private bank manages today. And here's the final twist of this story, the one I want you to walk away with when this video ends. That man could, at any moment, buy the most expensive car on the lot, the biggest house in the neighborhood, the most exclusive clothes in any store. He has more than enough money to do it 10 times over without even noticing the impact on his net worth. But he chooses not to, not because he can't, but because he figured out a long time ago that real freedom isn't being able to buy expensive things. Real freedom is not needing anyone to know that you can. That's the fundamental difference between looking rich and being free. Looking rich is a performance that costs money constantly, that requires upkeep, that depends on other people's approval, and that often leaves you exactly where you started, or worse, in debt and trapped in a spending cycle that never stops. Being free, on the other hand, is quiet. It doesn't need an audience. It doesn't need outside validation. It simply exists, growing in the background, protected, while you live your life without the constant pressure to prove something to people who, honestly, probably don't think about you nearly as much as you imagine. So the next time you feel that urge to buy something, just so other people notice things are going well for you, stop for a second and ask yourself this: am I making this decision because it genuinely improves my life, or because I want someone else to think something specific about me? That simple question, asked consistently over the years, can be the difference between ending up like person A in our example or person B. Between a life that looks successful on social media but is actually held up by debt and anxiety, and a life that looks ordinary from the outside but is built on real freedom, real security, and real options. Quiet money doesn't look for applause. It doesn't need witnesses. It simply grows, protected, while the world looks the other way, dazzled by people spending more than they have to look like something they aren't yet. And you, now that you understand this, have an advantage most people never take the time to discover. The next time someone gives you a second glance because your car isn't the newest or your clothes don't carry a visible logo, remember that invisibility isn't a weakness. It's very likely the most reliable sign that you're building something real. See you in the next video.